How's it going, everybody? It's Aunii here, and I'm just gonna quickly share my Fractals guide. Well, I lied. It's not quickly. It's gonna be maybe some time because I like to dive deep into the build. But first, we'll just tell you what I'm using, and then I can go further deep. And then I'll probably be showing some Fractal gameplay of how I play in Fractals and my ability rotations and all that, which I think is the most important thing when playing Berserker, Bannerslave Warrior. But here's the build. It's nothing too deep, but this is what we go for. Strength, Discipline, Berserker, and Berserker we go for everything on top. For Strength, bottom, middle, top, and for Adrenaline, middle, top, top. We go for, this is probably a very important one right here, the Axe Mastery, because you're going to be using a lot of the Axe, and you gain Ferocity with it. Which helps with your F1 Adrenaline, which is very important in this build. And Axe Mastery is just huge to have. So they also gain reduced recharge, and you get Adrenaline if you critically strike. So it's everything you need, really, because you want Adrenaline, and you want F1 as much as possible because you have a limited type frame with Berserker. So Axe Mastery is probably the most important thing here. Another important thing here is double standards, because you're playing banners. You want double standards. You want the banners to be enhanced. You want them to be improved. Warrior Spirit, you run faster while wielding melee weapons, and you deal increased damage while you have swiftness. You're bound to get buffed from your other teammates. They give you swiftness. And your movement skills break immobilization when used. So that applies for your 3. On your whirlwind attack, and that applies for your 5 on rush. Though this is if you use greatsword, though. I'm gonna get to that in a minute because sometimes you don't always want to use greatsword, but I'll explain right now in a minute. Peak performance, pretty self-explanatory. You do more damage if you have an ability that would give you peak performance. So like the Bola. And other things like that. The physical skills have reduced recharge, which is the important part here, and you increase all outgoing physical damage. So I find that really, really good to have. And the other 2 options are not exactly amazing. The next one is okay, because stability is always good in Fractals, so you can choose between this or this. I like to stay with this because I like to do more damage. So it's that simple, really. Forceful Greatsword, because I'm playing Greatsword, obviously, and even if you don't play Greatsword, you should still go for this because the other 2 options are not exactly that great in Fractals. Here you get power and chance to gain might on crit strike, which is the one thing you need, because you're swapping to axe and you're gaining ferocity from it, as well as you're getting might. So you gain might on critical strike, and this gives you ferocity. So these 2 work really well together. And Berserker power, because you're Berserker. Literally. You're always going to be using your F1. F1 is your main damage. So having Adrenaline stage is really important. You gain increased damage when you use a burst skill. Damage increase based on your Adrenaline. And you can just F1, 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 and you'll do so much damage. So that's what I would recommend. Berserker, everything on top. You want to increase Berserker mode duration. You want to get as many F1s in there as possible. When I say F1, by the way, I don't know if you use a different keybind, but it's the Berserk ability. Blood reaction. A percentage of a precision is given as a bonus to ferocity, and this bonus is doubled in Berserker mode. So it's really good to have more critting. So I would always go for this. And then of course you have Bloody Roar, which deals increased damage while in Berserker mode, which makes sense because you're trying to get as many F1s in there. You're a heavy DPS Berserker. You're doing so much damage in a matter of seconds. So you're actually very important in a Fractal group. One of the most important classes, I feel, because you get a lot of F1s in, you get a lot of DPS. So definitely recommend. These other options, you have to go for them, obviously. You can't swap them out. But they're all really good. They help with your overall damage. Like burst skills restore endurance on hit, so you can evade more stuff. You can dodge and hit, and you damage foes at the end of the dodge roll, and you get might from it. So you can just roll, get free might, and you can hit someone while you're rolling. We have Adrenaline Weapon Swap. You're going to be swapping to either maces or greatsword. You're always going to play double axes. The other weapon choice is greatsword or maces. It depends on your comp. It depends on the situation. So that's what I would tell you right now. And I'll tell you the sigils I use for those. You get might on weapon swap, of course, that's really good. You want to have as much might as possible because you want as much power as possible. And might gives you both condition damage and power. And it's good to have both because Berserker does bleeding damage, or rather burning damage, which is condition damage. So the more might, the better. And obviously here you get access to primal bursts. And there you can see burning. Skills and actions are faster. So skills and actions are faster is really nice because you can, as soon as you start Berserker, you have 3 seconds to quickly do some actions. So usually it's Greatsword Spin, Blood Reckoning, Greatsword Spin, 100 Blades. And then you swap to your axes. But if you're using Axe Mace, you only want to use the axe the whole time. And you just F1 with the axe a lot. Gain a burst of speed when entering Berserker mode is also good. So you get quickness here. And that's really good because you want to continuously have that quickness to be able to quickly deal damage in a fast amount of time. Berserker mode increases power and condition damage but reduces toughness. You shouldn't worry about the toughness part because you are a hardcore DPS. You're doing a lot of damage. This isn't a toughness build in any way. This is a pure power build, focusing on dealing as much damage as possible in a matter of seconds. Now that we've explained the abilities, keep in mind this is a support banner. Like the idea of this is banners, and the banners enhance your overall damage. So that's why I call it support banners, because you're supporting your team and giving them more damage. But as for the weapon of choice, greatsword, axes, and maces. Now the one thing that will stay is your double axes. Here's what I use: Sigil of Impact, Superior Sigil of Impact, and Superior Sigil of Force on my axes. And on my claymore, I use Sigil of Force, Sigil of Impact. Because when they're stunned and their Defiance bar is broken, you're gonna do more damage, and that's always good to have. That also applies here versus stunned or knocked down foes, so that you'll do increased damage. So I would recommend these 2 sigils on this and the sigil on the greatsword. Well, you can have 2 on the claymore, of course, because it's a 2-handed weapon. Here are the maces. I run double maces, not mace shield. I don't run shield on Fractals. I use Superior Sigil of Paralyzation and Superior Sigil of Severance, which means that if you interrupt an enemy, you gain 250 precision and ferocity for 4 seconds. So as soon as you do that, you swap to your axes, and then you have free 250 precision. And you're also increasing your ferocity because of your abilities that we just talked, not your abilities, sorry, your skills that we just talked about, which we said increases precision, ferocity, and all those stuff. This enhances that. Furthermore, your ability on the axe gives you fury. So you have a crit chance. So you have extra crit chance, you have quickness, you have your spin damage. This build is heavy focuses on a lot of DPS per second. So when should you run double maces? You want to run them when you know that your team doesn't have enough CC, or you tried to go for the boss and his Defiance bar wasn't breaking fast enough. Now I only do this if they don't have CC, because Greatsword is awesome and I love using it. But sometimes you have to, or you have to do it for the team because no one's really doing all the stuns. That's why I have this as backup, so I get the stuns. Now why exactly do we go this? Well, what's so special about the maces? I'll tell you. Because you're 3, okay, here's the thing. 2 is not something you want to use. You're not going to be using it as much. You're 1, okay, you'll use 1 sometimes because you have a swap weapon cooldown. So in that time, you're going to be hitting 1, 1, 1, and then swap the axes. Your 4 is okay because it adds vulnerability. But what you want to do, the first thing you do when you swap to mace is you're going to daze, you're going to tremor, which will knock them down, and then you're gonna headbutt. Headbutt is really strong because it's a hard stun, and hard stuns do a lot of damage to Defiance bar. Now the daze, here's the thing. Fun fact, the daze in the mace is considered a stun. It is actually considered a stun. I checked it out, and that's why we have 30% stun duration on my mace as a sigil, because it is actually considered a stun. It's a daze, it's an interrupt, but it counts as a stun. You can check it on wiki, on Pommel Bash, and you can see that daze is mentioned that it's considered a stun. So it's in that category. So having 30% stun duration helps break the Defiance bar more because they're stunned for longer. This also helps with your headbutt because headbutt is a stun. So having 30% stun duration means that you're breaking the Defiance bar even more. Now, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, Defiance bar, what is Defiance bar? Just for the new players, I'll explain very briefly. It's the bar under the health of the boss. It's either locked, there's cages around it, it's either locked, or it's either gray or teal, whatever color you want to name it. And then there's brown. And the brown one is when the Defiance bar recharges. Here's just a simple tip. It's not a pro tip. I was about to say pro tip. It's a simple tip. The idea is you only want to use your stuns and CCs when the bar is gray. You don't want to use your CC when the CC bar is locked, which has like cages around it and spikes and looks metallic. You don't want to CC when it's brown and it's recharging up. You never want to use it because it's a waste. You're not stunning them. They are immune to CC completely when the bar is brown, and it's recharging. They're immune to CC. And when they're locked, they don't take any CC at all either. Only when they're gray, go for the stuns. There's some... You always want to pay attention to that because you want to know when you're going to swap the mace. A good little thing I can tell you is there is a boss in Fractals for the Sun Spear part with Joko. That boss, in the end, the priestess, she has a brief time where it's locked. It's always locked, and then she does that thing in the air, which causes everyone a blast. And during that time, she is vulnerable to CC. So that's when swap the mace. 3, 5, headbutt. That's it. You're stunned. You're stunned. You're stunned. Those 3 abilities. That's it. The priestess is stunned. Additionally, condition damage affects Defiance bar, but it affects it over time. So these are considered like CCs. They're not like soft CCs. They're like good CCs. Condition damage would be considered like soft. Like daze is considered soft-ish because it's not like a stun. You can't compare it. But it's considered as part of a stun because Wiki says so. So you can always trust Wiki, alright? And the 30% stun duration helps with headbutt and daze. And obviously we knock them down too. So you have a lot of CC, right? You have a lot of CC. Also, by the way, Skull Grinder, your F1 on mace. You should never really use F1 on mace. You should always use F1 on axes because it does more damage. But if you're curious, there's a Skull Grinder. And it's not so bad because it does bleeding, blindness, confusion, cripple. And those are considered soft, over time, Defiance bar breaking kind of things, condition damage. So it dazes your target and afflicts multiple condies. So this is considered a daze. If you feel like the Defiance bar isn't breaking or whatever. But it usually breaks. When you press 3, 5, and your headbutt, the Defiance bar usually breaks. I haven't been in a situation where that doesn't happen. Except maybe if you're in tier 4, you never really know what happens. But as a backup, if your team isn't CCing and you used all these, then you use your F1. Boom. They get dazed. You do damage to Defiance bar. Okay? So that's the idea of this build. Now, again, when do you go for maces? When your team doesn't have crowd control. When you feel like your team isn't doing enough CC. That's the idea of this build. Now, if they do have CC, if you're fine, let me get a look here. If you're fine, You go Claymore. By the way, all this gear is Berserker, in case you're wondering. All of this is power focused. Power, everything's Berserker. Just to let you know. This is a full power Berserker Bannerslave build. Now, if they don't have CC, you go Greatswords. Greatsword, sorry. And the beautiful thing about Greatsword is 100 blades, and your F1 is the best, most satisfying thing to ever use ever, because I love it so much. I don't know, I just love it. Alright, the first strike is 240, second strike 360, third strike radius. You spin 3 times, and your third one's the highest. So you spin, 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 and then Blood Reckoning, spin, 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 100 blades. After 100 blades, you might think, okay, after 100 blades I will dash, go back, I'll throw 4, and then I'll dash, I'll hit the boss, and then I'll swap the axes. Here's why I don't think you should do that. Why I don't think you should 3, 4, 5. You shouldn't use those in that time when you're about to adrenaline. Here's the thing. I will explain briefly the rotation I use with Greatsword and axes. Briefly I'll explain, okay? The idea is, you're pressing F1, okay, that activates. So F1, spin, Blood Reckoning, spin. After 6 spins, 100 blade, let the full animation play, even the last hit. After the last hit, you swap the maces, then you press 2, 3, and then F1. You're gonna have your F1 after you press 2, 3, and then you're gonna press 4, 3, and then you're gonna hit, and then F1 again, and then you're gonna 5. And when the 5 finishes, you F1 again. And then you just keep hitting, and your Cyclone Axe will be back up, and then you just keep hitting. You're doing so much damage. And mid all that, if you notice that they have Defiance bar, you want to headbutt. Don't use headbutt if they don't have Defiance bar up. If it's brown or if it's locked. Only use headbutt if it's gray. You might think, oh, well, it resets my adrenaline back to full. Yes, it does reset your adrenaline back to full. But what's the point? You're using axes. You get adrenaline so fast by just hitting. Like, I literally hit 1, 1, and then 1, 1, 1. It does that 3 hits in the end. You're getting so much adrenaline. You don't have to worry about, like, oh, but I need my adrenaline back because headbutt gives adrenaline back. Forget it. Use this because it's a hard stun, and it's really good to use on a boss when it has Defiance bar. Now, by all means, if the boss never goes on gray Defiance bar, you can use this to reset adrenaline, but most of the Fractals, their Defiance bar becomes gray at some point, and you want to use that. I think it's very important. Obviously, when you enter a fight, you're always going to put banners down. So banners are down, you go in, you do your thing. Initially, you can 100 blades right off the bat. So you can use your 100 blades in the beginning, and dash, and do all that. You can do that in the beginning because you don't have your adrenaline to max yet. Alternatively, you can use the axe and get your adrenaline fast, because if you want to get adrenaline fast, axe is the way to go. So 2, 3, 4, 3, 5. And then your adrenaline is full. At this point, your adrenaline is full. At this point, you can weapon swap, F1, Q, F1, 100 blades. Swap the axes, and then your cooldowns will be back up. That's the idea, right? If you're going to start with axes in the boss fight. Right, so I'll just explain briefly, very quickly again. You go in the fight with 2, 3, 4, and then 3 again, and then 5. So that's the idea behind this. And then you swap, and then you F1, because you're going to have your adrenaline. So F1, Q, F1, 100 blades, and then you just do your thing. But that's the basic rotation of this build. This is how it's done. Hopefully this has been informative for you guys. I've tried to explain this as best as I can. But this is the build. This is my favorite Fractal build, because it revolves around improvising based on the situation. You're going double maces if your team needs CC, and you're going Greatsword if your team doesn't have CC, because Greatsword does more damage than maces. Choices of food. You're gonna need those, by the way. You will be needing these if you're gonna play Fractal tier 3, tier 4, like the hard stuff. But here is what I use. Not defensive. I need to buy a aggressive potion. But you can buy these in the Fractal. You can buy the the mist defensive potions and all that in the Fractal, and I'll show you which NPC sells those. And the NPC that sells it is close to the bank and the trading post. I would recommend going there to get those. And the condition damage one is okay. There's one for condition damage. You get them right off. Yeah, the Alchemist. Large Mist defensive potion, Large Mist mobility, defensive. Really good to have, all three. The offensive one, you increase your outgoing damage, but it's condition damage. So, it's still okay because you're doing condition damage. You're burning because you're Berserker. So I would just go for it. I would go all three. If you're like really like trying to go in and get that fractal done and like it's hard. So you obviously you want all three. Choices of food, superior sharpening stone, bowl of sweet. These two allow you to get, it gives you a lot of power and ferocity, and gives you power equal to 3% of your precision, and power to 6% of your ferocity. It's huge. You never want to use double enhancements, by the way, or double nourishment. So you can't have, oh, I want to have tins of fruitcake and I want to have bowl. You can't. You can only have one. It's the apple icon. You can only have one apple icon, and you can have only one gear icon, as you can see right there, enhancement. So nourishment, enhancement, two different things. But yeah, really, that is really the build here. It's focused on a lot of damage. My friend said hello. Hey man, just making a video. Say hi to YouTube. Kick W. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. And hopefully this build has helped out. Hopefully this gets you a lot of victories in Fractals, and hopefully your team will like you because you're an amazing person who goes for the double maces when needed and swaps the greatsword. Obviously, if you don't have those things yet, if you don't have the maces yet, you can just go greatsword. It's still amazing. Like, you're doing so much damage, and the Defiance bar is bound to break because people usually would CC, but sometimes they won't, right? And it's up to you because maces are so good for that kind of thing. So you want to change based on the situation. That's how I feel in Fractals. You want to change greatsword, change to maces when the situation arises. Anyway, I hope this has been informative. This is my skills, by the way, here. Signet of Might is really good because you increase power. So it's always good to have. Always, because this is a power-focused build. And you're doing a lot of damage. Yeah, Mom, get the camera. Yeah, get the camera right there. That's a real El Nino, dude. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully this has helped out. And I will see you guys at a later time. I will see you in the mists of death. Peace out.